Hello, welcome everyone today to the tutorial on how to set up a deobfuscated environment for Forge 1.7.10. This tutorial will most likely work for Forge versions later than this, but we're going to stick to 1.7.10 for this context. Let's go over what deobfuscated means real quick. So whenever you compile any Java code, it doesn't actually keep your original method or field name and instead changes them into some random nonsensical word or phrase. Deobfuscation tries to fix this by guessing what the field name might be, and when you set up Forge, most of the variables and methods will look normal, but we'll go over this in a separate context. Anyways, let's download Forge real quick. We're gonna go over and open Chrome, and we're gonna type in files.minecraftforge.net. Now you're going to be greeted with this lovely web page. Let's see, we're going to go to 1.7.10. If you're using this tutorial for newer versions, you're going to download the MDK, or Mod Development Kit, but we're using 1.7.10, and here's the latest version available. Now, pro tip for everyone, if you dislike the Forge staff team and Lex Manos and everyone there, here's a little bit of a special trick. If you go over here and you go here, you can click direct download and not give them any ad revenue. So we're going to need the source zip file here. So now we've achieved this. We have this here. Now next, we're going to need to download IntelliJ. Let's go over to jetbrains.com. And we're going to select IntelliJ. We're going to download it. And for our use cases, community would be perfectly fine. But if you want to download Ultimate and don't mind spending money or using your student license, you can go that direction as well. Next thing on our list, we're going to need Gradle. Let's see. I'm going to search up Gradle 3. And here, Gradle.org is the web page you're looking for. Now, we're not going to need any of this. We're going to scroll straight down all the way to the latest version of Gradle 3. And we're going to want the... either one of these works probably. Yeah, there we go, that one. Now you may ask, why do you want a Gradle 3 instead of any other version? Well, Gradle 2 is too old and doesn't work, and all the other Gradles do not work either for reasons beyond my comprehension, so Gradle 3. You can give all the other Gradle versions a shot too if you're feeling lucky, but they won't work. At least not with 1.7.10. It might work with newer versions, like 1.15 for instance. Now that we're downloading that, there's one more thing we're going to need. So while everything else is downloading, we can get started with setting other things up. Let's start, for instance, with this. So this is the source zip file. And all that really gets you is the Gradle setup folder and a example mod. So we're going to take this, we're going to extract all these files to a worthy location. Make sure you extract this to somewhere where it's actually going to be easy for you to find and work with. Here we go. Now we see all of this. And yes, there's a readme.txt. It isn't very useful, frankly. All the credits and the licenses, alright. And some tutorials will use the Gradle.bat file, but all of this normally will get you is a Gradle 2 installation that will most likely fail to work. And it'll also require the Java home variable in order to find Java, because Windows was very well designed when they came up with that idea. So we have the Forge source file, or source zip file. Let's go over what's inside of it while everything else is downloading. So we have the main Java com. So this is going to be where your mod is, and this is going to be essentially the starting point for your mod if you decide to write one. And if you have any resources, images, models, textures, sounds, these will go in your resources, and including your mcmod.info file. Now the Eclipse folder, it's named Eclipse, but it doesn't require you to actually have Eclipse installed. This was later changed to the Run folder, I believe, in newer versions of Forge, such as the MDK. But here it's Eclipse. This is where all of your Minecraft files will be downloaded, and where it will essentially run the mod once you decide to compile and run it. Now the JDK is downloaded, so we can start that. Make sure do not download the JRE or the Java runtime environment. Download this. The JDK is what you're going to need. Now the main difference between the JDK and the JRE, I'm just going to use those abbreviations instead. The JDK is essentially the Java development kit. It's sort of a DLC for your original Java runtime environment, but luckily it's free, at least mostly. And this will allow us to not just run Java programs, but also create them, such as jar files or Pack 200 files. You're not going to be using those, but it also has a compiler. So essentially everything that we need to run Java code, you need the JDK for it. Now the last thing on our list is IntelliJ, and if you use Eclipse, you're dead to me. Just go back to 2014 and find any other tutorial. We're going to be using IntelliJ instead. Now we're going to install that, and you don't need administrative privileges to install IntelliJ. If you cancel that, it'll install it into your app data or whatever. But for our use case as well, we're going to install it for everyone. I'm going to click Next, and there's a 32-bit version and 64-bit version. It doesn't really matter that much. If you want to open all of your Java files or any of these file types, they're only really going to be useful in IntelliJ, so you might as well create those associations. And this is just for desktop shortcuts. That should be it. No, we're not going to need any more of this. So while this is installing, let's go back real quick to our downloads folder. It should be here. So Gradle, let's just extract all of this. And this will take a second since I'm running this in a virtual machine. Hopefully your computer is faster with all of this, but to each their own. Alright, now that we have accomplished this, we're going to be able to run the Community Edition for the first time. And yes, there's some sort of license agreement. And don't send. Now, if this is your first time setting up IntelliJ like it is on this computer, do note that this is the only UI theme. This one is a joke. Use this one. And we won't need to really change anything else in this case, so we'll just skip that. And here we go. Now we can open or import a project, which is what we're going to do in this case. Now we're going to go over to wherever you saved the zip file earlier and extracted it, which in this case is going to be here. We're going to click OK. And here we're greeted with the IntelliJ interface. Now there's going to be a lot of things being written here. We're not going to need tips. If you want to leave those enabled, that's up to you. And next, we're going to go over a little bit of what this actually is. First off, let's set up Gradle. Gradle is over here on the upper right corner. Set that up. When you select the Gradle version, make sure to select the one inside it. This is a bit of an oversight on my part. So select that, and it'll sync for a little bit. In this case, we're just gonna go back to search up JDK 8. We're gonna download that instead. So you may need an account to download JDK 8 because Oracle has decided in their infinite wisdom to, for whatever reason, lock all the old JDKs behind an account creation portal. But this should not dissuade you, as this is free, and JDK 8 will work, unlike JDK 12, which inherently is incompatible with newer versions of Java. Alright, there we go. Now we're going to go back here, and we're going to select JDK 8. And we're going to select that, and let's try this again. And for this, it doesn't really matter, but just because Windows Firewall likes to screw things up if you don't enable it, might as well. So this is going to download a lot of files that will look foreign, and you don't need to worry about that. These are all the different libraries that Forge will use in order to actually allow you to write any of the code. And this is going to look similar regardless of which version of Forge you're working with. So all of this is going to be downloaded. And it says configuration successful. Now in the meantime, we can also set up the JDK here, which is going to be 8. Now, make sure that you keep in mind what you set up here. This is the JDK that Gradle will use to compile your code. And what you set up here is what you're going to be, or what IntelliJ thinks you're going to be compiling code in. IntelliJ, in this case, does not compile code for you. Gradle takes care of that. And here it says, could not find or resolve whatever Forge bin is. And so, in this case, you're going to start to see some syntax highlighting. It's going to start to say, all of these items are not found, could not be defined. And so, this is actually working as intended. We're going to go over here and look into tasks. Now, under tasks, you're going to see a lot of these different menus, and you're not going to need to use most of these. Particularly, we're going to look under ForgeGradle. And for the first thing we're going to need is set up decomp workspace. And in this case, decomp is short for decompile. It's going to download Minecraft and all the files. And it's going to decompile them in order to actually be able to map all of Minecraft's source code to whatever you're trying to use here. And you're going to see a lot more files being downloaded. Alright, and we're finally fully set up. So if all you needed to know is how to set up your deobfuscated Forge environment, here you go. This is what it looks like. If we double click Run Client, it will go through the process and launch Minecraft for you. And here we see that we have Forge, and your example mod, which is just the demonstration principle mod, is loaded up. Now, if you actually want to do anything, if you actually want to replicate and build out your mod, here's a couple starting steps for you real quick. So this is your initialization event. This is most likely where you're going to be able to initialize all of your items. If you have a lot of items or blocks, they'll have to be registered in a what's called a game registry in this case. And it will be run when you first load up the game. If we look here through the log files, we will see the log message as it is here. Now, one of the most useful things to look into when you're writing any code and you want to replicate any existent functionality, if you want to do something, someone most likely has done it before you, as the saying goes. And if we open up our external libraries list here, we can go over to the Forge source library and scroll down here, and this is where you're going to see the source code for Minecraft itself. So if you want to replicate the functionality of realistically any item, you can double click, you can see what the item is, and this is what your sort of unobfuscated compiled function will look like. So all of these names do not make any sense. That's why, as I referenced before, this is what it's sort of being translated. This is sort of a translation file. And so with all of this, item boats, you can look into any of this, figure out how any of this works. There's some very minimal documentation added for this, but it's rarely useful for anything. And so here you can figure out how any of this works, how to spawn boats, how to add custom items and replicate already existent functionality. So it's going to be, this is probably the most useful tool set for writing any new functionality. If you want to add a new command, you can see how they've already done it and how to go forth from here. And one last bit of advice is that in your Gradle file here, you can see the Minecraft version here and the run directory. You can change the run directory to whatever you want. It doesn't have to be the Eclipse folder, which is where sort of your logs and your configurations will be generated and your world files. But if you actually want to have the most up-to-date sort of version of the translation files, as I listed them before, you're going to want to do something a bit differently. Now this is the actual website. I'm going to link this in the description, but this is the website you actually want to look for up-to-date mappings, because the ones that are normally distributed with the default build.gradle file, they're either not provided or very old. So what you actually want to do is look for the most recent one here. And if we go to daily snapshots and we select our version, in this case 1.7.10, we can see which snapshot is, in this case, the most latest one. And we're just going to adapt this name. So if you go here, we go mappings equals this, and this actually will not work by itself. So we're going to delete the suffix here and delete this and underscore that, and you get the properly formatted mappings. Alright, that's the brief overview on how to get started with modding.